Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning in to Strategic Wealth Lives. My name is Matt Dickin, and of course, I will be your host again here today. I think this is probably going to be one of the most important webinar events that we're going to do possibly this entire year. We're going to be talking to individuals or talking about individuals that may have lost their jobs here recently in the economic downturn, as well as individuals that are maybe concerned about losing their jobs. So looks like we have quite a few individuals still kind of going through the login process. So like we've done in the past, I'm going to share with you a quick little video clip of some of our news appearances that we've done with some of our relationships over the last several weeks. And then after the short video, I'll be back with you and we will get the presentation started. So enjoy the video clip and I will see you in just a moment.
Viewers out there were set to retire in the next 18 months or so and have seen accounts drop by as much as 30%. That's huge. What do you say to this group and what they should do?
Yeah, the main thing is to try and take advantage of the opportunity that we have right now, because the market has rallied a little bit, to put a safety net underneath your portfolio. So if things get volatile again moving forward, you don't have to watch your assets go back down in value again like they have basically over the last 20 to 30 days. So individuals really need to take advantage of the opportunity we have right now to lock in their assets, because things could get worse as we start to see the unemployment numbers continue to go higher. Corporate earnings are going to be released next month, and all indications are it's not going to be good.
This stimulus bill, it was given credit for raising the market quite a bit last week. I don't know if that's the whole reason, but a lot of people gave it the credit. Is that going to last? Was it enough? And that all important question, is the worst over with the market? Can we say that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people was optimistic because this is a great headline. It is great that we're getting a $2 trillion stimulus. But if we think about the GDP for this country's over $24 trillion a year. So this is really only 1 month of that if we shut down all businesses, which is basically what's happened.
You're the guy that knows the most. So rapid fire, my friend. Number one, is there anything I can do right now or I ought to be doing with my retirement or my investments?
Number one, the big thing right off the bat is have a plan. We're in crazy uncharted times economically, and it's really easy to react to what happens in the market on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing would be have a concrete plan that you can stick with, because if you don't have a plan, it's like you're flying through retirement without air traffic control. And if you're flying without air traffic control, you may not get to your final destination.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching those news clips. We have a few more that have joined us. So once again, my name is Matt Dickin. We're going to be talking today about what individuals should do with their 401k plans or 403b plans if either yourself or maybe a family member or a friend, a loved one may unfortunately have lost their job recently, as well as we're going to be giving some tips to individuals that maybe haven't lost their job, some things you can do with your 401k. If you're still employed, and then of course talk about some of the changes that we're seeing happen in the economy and just in this new environment or new world that we're operating in. Those that don't know me or the company Strategic Wealth Designers, I'll give you kind of a brief overview. We have been helping individuals with their retirement plans for as a company for almost 20 years now. I've got 23 years worth of experience in the industry. As a company, all of our advisors back in our different offices, collectively, we have over 100 years in helping individuals with their retirement goals and dreams. And I'll talk about it a little bit later here in the presentation, but we primarily typically work with those that are retired already or soon to be retired, meaning you plan on retiring within about the next 10 years. We do work with a lot of our clients, children and grandchildren, of course, in times like we're going through right now. We want to help as many people as we can, but that's traditionally who we typically focus the planning on and those that we can typically help most. I started the firm because I really wanted to be able to operate, both myself and the other advisors, I wanted to be able to operate in an environment where we didn't have things like quotas that we had to adhere to, and we were really free to work with the best investments and options that were going to be a perfect fit for our clients. So we are an independent firm, not tied to any one large company where we're forced to only offer their products and accounts. We can work with any company or investment that's appropriate for our clients. And then, of course, I think probably the biggest difference with us is the fact that we are fiduciaries, meaning that everything that we do recommend to individuals when we can help them has to be in the client's best interest. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail here in a few moments. But I think that's probably one of the big reasons why we've had so many individuals coming to us in the past, and of course right now, for help and advice as far as what to do next. So let me pull up the presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you here today. Again, focus kind of on a couple of different areas. Of course, what to do with your 401k, or maybe you have a 403b, or some of our viewers right now may have a thrift savings plan as well, if they're a federal employee. But there are some tips as far as what you should do if you've lost your job, if you think that you may lose your job in the immediate future, or if you have no concerns whatsoever about losing your job. That's great. We'll have some tips for you in regards to what to do in that scenario as well. But let's start out here a little bit talking about, and I'm going to take my picture on and off the screen here a little bit so you can see everything. Let's talk a little bit why we thought it was a good idea to create this particular webinar and share this information today. As we know already, we've seen so far tens of millions of Americans have lost their job as a result of the issues that we're dealing with as a country due to coronavirus. And it's projected that millions more may also lose their job in the weeks and months to come. Some have projected as many as 47 million may be laid off. I hope it doesn't get that high, but that's what's being projected right now. That would mean that the unemployment rate could be as high as 30%, something we haven't seen in close to 100 years. And again, hopefully it doesn't get that bad, but this is just kind of the landscape that we're dealing with right now. And part of what's causing that, or some other side effects of that, are, of course, the stock market has been in and around a bear market due to government mandated shutdowns that are continuing for right now. And again, hopefully they expire and we can all get back to work and go back to normal life here in the not too distant future. But the scary thing that I see with everything that's going on right now is the longer that we're kind of in the shutdown mode, the longer it's going to take to get back to quote unquote normal times. So hopefully we can get this over and done with sooner rather than later. But I think the longer that it drags on, the more painful it's going to be. And I saw in the Wall Street Journal here recently, they cited a survey that was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in coordination with MetLife. And they found that of those surveyed, already 1/4 of the small businesses that they had talked to had already closed. And then another 40% were saying that they were going to have to close within the next 2 weeks. So all of this is leading us to believe that unemployment will, of course, continue to rise. And there's going to be more and more people kind of looking for what to do with their 401k plans if they have indeed lost their job, or they're concerned that they may lose their job. So there's a couple of things that we would recommend for those specifically that still have their job, and then we'll talk here in just a moment some tips for things of that you should do if you have, of course, already lost your position. But if you are currently employed, there are still a few things that you should consider doing. Take a look at your current position within your organization. You know, some companies are not as affected as others with everything that we're dealing with right now. It depends on what industry you're in, of course, but try and review your current position and the strength and stability of the company that you work for currently. And there's no guarantees in life, but try and project a little bit how likely you think it may be that you would actually lose your position or your job, or your company may close or go into some sort of a temporary shutdown. You also want to analyze and assess how quickly you think that you could maybe pick up another position if that were to happen. Certain positions, of course, are in demand. We see that in the news all the time right now, that certain companies are needing to hire individuals, and you may have a certain skill set that's very marketable. So you can kind of assess if it would be something you'd have to deal with for a few weeks, or unfortunately as many as a few months. It's also a good opportunity to consider, should you stay in the industry that you've been operating in, or maybe jump into a brand new industry. I think that everybody's looking forward to when we can come out of our homes again and maybe everything kind of goes back to normal. But I think that there's going to be lasting impact from what we've seen here with this particular crisis, and certain industries are going to be altered, and they'll really never be the same again. That's going to be that will create some opportunities to maybe do something different, and it also may be a signal that it's time to do something different. So maybe analyze that a little bit. Of course, you can start to do some due diligence and find out what type of benefits would be offered if there was some sort of a shutdown or a layoff at your employer. Are they going to cover your health insurance, as an example, while you're off? Are they going to, make your pension plans available for rollover, or available to start drawing income from them early? You can kind of start to get your ducks in a row now and see, what options you would have available if, unfortunately, you were to join some of the millions that have already lost their position. And then, of course, it's also a time where some individuals can take a look and see, should they just go ahead and go into retirement? Do I even need to go and look for another job? We saw that some during the financial crisis, where some individuals were laid off, or companies were closing, and rather than try and update the resume and find another position, some individuals said, hey, I know the market has pulled back a little bit, but we did a good job of saving and investing over time. We're just going to go ahead and see if we can retire now. Now, of course, in order to do that and make that determination, you typically need to have a retirement income analysis done. And that's something that, of course, us at Strategic Wealth Designers can help you determine. I wouldn't just, make the decision without doing some analysis, but that's something that we could potentially help you with if you're needing to talk with someone. Now, for those of you that have already been laid off or lost your position, take a look at some of the new benefits that are being offered. The recent stimulus plan that was passed through Congress added an additional $600 per week on top of your traditional unemployment benefits. So that's going to help out some individuals, kind of bridge the gap on their income. And then also some states are beginning to do some unique things. Recently, New York State wants to add an additional $600 on top of the additional $600 that the federal government is paying right now per week. So those in New York State could maybe earn an additional $3,000 to $4,000 per month over and above what they could normally earn through unemployment benefits. And you're going to see other states kind of follow suit and take the same path. So right now we have viewers from all over the country. You do want to look at your specific state and see how they've changed the unemployment benefits and how they may be different today than what they have been traditionally in the past. Again, something that's common right now with most states is that you used to have to wait 2 weeks before you could start filing for unemployment. Most states have either waived that completely or said instead of waiting 2 weeks, you just have to wait 1 week. And then I think pretty much all states, at least from what I've seen in the news, they've waived the work search requirement, meaning usually in order to get unemployment benefits, you had to prove that you were submitting your resume and going on interviews and things of that nature in order to collect those benefits moving forward. But most states, if not all of them, have eliminated that requirement, which is a good thing. It's kind of hard in the current conditions to try and look for a new job in most scenarios. And then, some that were originally unable to draw unemployment, certain industries or certain types of jobs usually couldn't draw unemployment benefits. Again, some of those restrictions have been waived. So an example would be, I know a lot of us haven't been able to get our haircuts done and gone, to the hair salons and barber shops and places like that. Usually those individuals are just 1099 independent contractors and not eligible for unemployment, but that has changed. So in most states, you are now able to apply for those types of things. So another thing that you want to double check and see, and these are great things to just have in your mind or maybe written down if unfortunately there's some sort of a surprise. I know most employers are trying to do a lot of communication with their staff and let them know exactly what's happening or what's projected to happen. But so hopefully if someone were to lose their job moving forward, it's not a complete surprise. But sometimes when you get that information, if it catches you a little bit off guard, there's certain questions you wish and had hoped to ask that just sometimes in the moment you don't think to ask. So maybe just kind of have a little mental note of some of these things. You want to know what type of severance is being offered, if anything, and how that's going to work, if it's going to be paid out over time or as a lump sum. If you do accept a severance, does that mean that you'll still be eligible to file for unemployment? Or is it an either go on unemployment or accept the severance? You want to make sure that you understand that before really signing anything and moving forward with your departure. And then again, if you have a pension plan, you want to double check and see what the company's plans are going to be for that as well. Are they going to change in the provisions, make it a little more accessible and a little more liquid because of what's happened? So a lot of these things that we're talking about, if you have been laid off, or again, if you're thinking that may be coming down the road, if you would like to, you can schedule a time to talk with one of our advisors. We can put everything that we've talked about so far. And again, here in a moment, I'm going to start talking specifically about 401ks and 403bs, what to do with those. But we can plug all of this information into a retirement income analysis and see if you wanted to go ahead and make the decision to retire today. How long will the money last? Hopefully it will last as long as you need it to. But we basically run the analysis out until both you, and if you're married, your spouse or significant other is age 100. And then from there, you can make smart decisions on whether you can go ahead and retire, or if you can't retire right now, we may be able to project that, we need to find another position or a new job for maybe a couple more years or 3 more years, something of that nature. At least then you'll be able to know exactly what it is that you're dealing with, and you'll know, kind of what your options need to be moving forward. So some sound financial advice for the current situation, and this is really something, again, that we would encourage everybody, whether you've already lost your position or concerned that you or a loved one, a friend or a family member may lose their position. How long can you really afford to be unemployed? Once you've gathered all the information on the unemployment benefits or the severance package, kind of take a look and assess at how long you can kind of bridge the gap, and how long can you make that money last. And if it's a short period of time, not as long as you think it may need to be, then take a look at what expenses you can potentially cut right now. This, of course, is something that companies across the country are dealing with. So kind of take a look at your household as a mini company, and start taking a look at some of the luxuries maybe that right now you just can't utilize whatsoever because you're not allowed to leave your home, or those businesses have been closed. Maybe there's no reason to continue to pay for those types of things. So try and find whatever expenses you can cut. One of the big things that I've been encouraging a lot of individuals to do is, if you're out of work or concerned you may and find yourself out of work, start working on trying to develop some sort of a new skill, a new talent. There's all kinds of things you can do online in the new digital world that we're all dealing with, where you can maybe get certain certifications, education, and learn something new that would make you more hireable to the next employer. Here at our company, traditionally, we've done dozens and dozens of face-to-face live events with as many as a few hundred people at a time. And of course, all of those types of events have been completely eliminated. So we, of course, had to pivot and start working on Zoom meetings and conference calls and doing webinars and things of that nature. So we've had quite a few team members on our staff. Some already had a good amount of experience operating in this type of digital world, but others not so much. So they've been going through and getting educated and practicing and learning how to utilize these tools, because it looks like we'll probably need to utilize them for the foreseeable future. So, and then again, last kind of bullet point that we have here on this screen is make sure that you have that income analysis done before you make the decision to retire. Occasionally we'll meet with individuals, they'll kind of come in and say, hey, went ahead and pulled the plug, I'm going to retire. Now I need to do an analysis and see how long my money will last. And that's kind of backwards from what we recommend. We don't want to do it that way. Go ahead and get the analysis done now. It's something that we run complimentary. I should have mentioned that earlier. So we don't charge anything to run these retirement income analysis, because they don't cost us much money to put together. Again, with our years of experience, we can put them together. It's not real costly for us to do that. It takes a little bit of time, but we'll be able to tell you exactly what your options are. And you really want to get that analysis done prior to making the decision to go ahead and retire. Okay, so let's transition and talk specifically about what you want to do with your 401k, or again, maybe 403b or TSP. If you are now in a position where you're not going to be contributing to that 401k for a variety of reasons. Again, maybe you've been laid off. I know that some companies are now eliminating or reducing the company match. Maybe some individuals just don't want to put any money into their 401k because they want to start building up a safety net in fears that they may lose their job and be out of work for a while. We've seen some individuals doing that. So anytime that you stop contributing to a 401k plan, and when I say that, that's going to be synonymous with 403b or TSP. When you stop contributing to those types of plans, they end up becoming what's referred to as a dormant account. And this is something that a lot of individuals kind of fail to really comprehend and get their arms around and understand. So I'm going to explain to you in just a moment the difference between dormant accounts and active accounts. But before I get into that, of course, here on the screen, we've got the rule of 100, which is something that we talk about often. If you've followed us here at Strategic Wealth Designers for any period of time, you know that we talk about this a lot. And the reason why we talk about it is specifically for times like going through right now. So for those of you that are not familiar with the rule, I'll give you a brief overview of it. Basically what it says is whatever your age is currently, that's the percentage of your portfolio that you should have safe and protected from risk, meaning in most cases you can't lose any money on it at all. And then the difference between your age and the number 100, that would be the maximum percentage of your portfolio that you could put at risk, or you should put at risk only if you're comfortable with risk. So it doesn't mean that you have to do this. It's just if you consider yourself traditionally to be a moderate investor or maybe a conservative or to moderate investor, you want to try and follow the rule of 100, especially when you are within 10 years of retirement. That's where it becomes critical. I kind of think everybody at every age could benefit from following the rule of 100, but it becomes very important when we kind of hit that home stretch and we're within 10 years of our planned retirement date. So as you can see here on the screen, we have a generic rule or a generic scenario of a 60-year-old with about $1 million in their portfolio. That, of course, means that they should have roughly $600,000 safe and protected, no more than $400,000 at risk in the market in things like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Now, every time we talk about this rule, everybody's always heard me say you do not have to hit these percentages exactly. You know, don't get stressed out about it. If you're 62 years old, you do not have to have a 38%, 62% split. You just want to be close. I really believe in most scenarios, 5 to 10 percentage points away from this rule is fine. I normally wouldn't recommend going more than 10 percentage points away from this rule, and especially right now with everything that we're seeing happen in the economy and in the stock market. And as I'm saying this, I know that there's going to be a lot of viewers right now that haven't been following this rule. Most of our clients here at the firm have, but we have a lot of individuals that are not currently clients. So if you're not following this rule currently, and maybe your portfolio has gone down a little bit in value, it is not too late to get into adherence with this rule. There are safety measures that we can put in place, and there are actions that you can take with your portfolio where you don't have to lock in a loss, and you don't have to worry about putting yourself into a position where you can't recover what's been lost so far. But you know, it's not too late. You do have to make some changes if you've seen losses and you don't want to continue to see those. But the good news is there are a lot of things that can be done. It's not too late to make some adjustments. Going back to the rule of 100 though, you know, a lot of times it makes sense to have certain types of accounts at risk and then other accounts where you want them in a completely safe manner. So I'm getting a little bit technical here. I'm going to try and keep this as simple as I possibly can. If you are going to take risk, either right now or moving forward, the most appropriate types of accounts to have risk are inside of what's referred to as actively funded accounts. Now, an actively funded account is any account that you are adding money to on a monthly basis. That's the key, and that's what makes it active. So you're actively contributing to the plan, like maybe your employer's retirement plan or any other investment program. If you're putting money in and investing it monthly, then that account is considered active, and that can be an okay time to have that money at risk. The reason why is because in an actively funded account, again, an account that you're putting money into monthly, you're able to take advantage of the volatility that we've seen recently here in the stock market. So what I mean by that is when the market goes down like it has this year, you don't get excited about it, but you're actually taking advantage of that volatility because you're still putting money in. So that means that you're investing more money at a lower price. You're maybe buying more shares of whatever investment you're investing in. And what will happen there is that will help you recover more quickly when the market ultimately rallies and rebounds and starts to move forward. So in an actively funded account, it can be okay to have some risk. And if you want to have risk in your portfolio, the absolute best place to take the risk is in an account that you are actively contributing to and taking advantage of the volatility that we're going through. Where the mistake gets made a lot of times is individuals will have what's referred to as a dormant account, like I just mentioned, any account that you're no longer contributing money to on a monthly basis. Again, that's the key. It has to be monthly. If you're not putting money into it at least monthly, then that account is considered dormant because you're no longer adding money to it. And that is where we typically want to reduce or eliminate some of the risk. And the reason why is because when we go through volatile periods like we're going through right now, when the market goes down in value, you're not taking advantage of the volatility. You just lose money. And then depending on the account, in particular 401ks, there's going to be fees and expenses associated with those plans that kind of drag the value of your account and that overall portfolio down even further. So you always have fees and expenses, and they matter when the market's going up, but they matter a lot more when the market's going down because they kind of compound the problem. So in a dormant account, what's happening is you're not taking advantage of the market when it goes higher and because you're no longer adding money at a lower price. And then when the market goes down, you just lose. And because of the fees and expenses sometimes that you're paying, that kind of compounds and you suffer and lose even more. So this is such a misunderstood issue that in my most recent book on retirement planning, we pretty much spent an entire chapter talking about the difference between active and dormant accounts because it's a mistake that a lot of investors make. They don't really understand the difference between the two. And candidly, it's a mistake that a lot of financial advisors make and stockbrokers make as well. They just don't understand the difference between actively funding an account and not actively funding an account and when it's appropriate to have risk and when it's not. So if you have you or again a loved one, a family member, if you've lost your job here recently, that account is no longer going to have additional funds put into it, most likely. So that account is now dormant, and you really want to take advantage of these types of opportunities to roll those 401ks and 403bs over to IRAs. There's a few reasons why we recommend that. We've said often that if you're not at your previous employer, we don't believe that your money should be either. So you may be in a scenario where you had a previous employer's retirement plan anyway, even before coronavirus, and you just never rolled it over. We really believe that if you're not at your previous employer, your money shouldn't be there either. Some main advantages of moving funds over to an IRA are going to be this. You get more control over the assets, meaning you can pick and choose whatever you want to invest it in. So a 401k, unfortunately, you're limited to just whatever investments, typically mutual funds, that your employer has given you to select from. So you may have a list of 10 or 40 or 100 different mutual funds, but that's pretty much it. You cannot invest in individual stocks typically, or individual bonds or ETFs or real estate or annuities or anything else. All you have is just one asset category, and that's mutual funds. So rolling it over to an IRA, you can invest the money in anything that you want to. So inside of the IRA, you could use mutual funds or individual stocks, bonds, ETFs, commodities like gold and silver. You can maybe do real estate, annuities. You can even get into collector items, things of that nature. So literally anything that you want to invest the money into, you can once it's in an IRA. Also, what ends up happening typically when you make that rollover, you can typically, not always, but you can typically reduce the fees and expenses that you're paying. Some of the fees that participants inside of a 401k or a 403b have to pay, some of those fees are disclosed on the statement. You may have noticed that change occurred, I think maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, where certain activists were trying to get more of these fees and expenses disclosed to participants, and the industry really fought that tooth and nail. And so they kind of ended up having this compromise in that some of the fees are disclosed, typically the management fees of the mutual funds, but not all of the fees are. So I think it really did more harm than good, because a lot of times people mistakenly believe, well, my statement shows me how much I'm paying in fees. They don't look so bad. And the reason why they don't look so bad is because that's only part of the story. Sometimes it's kind of just the tip of the iceberg on what the total cost is, because 401k plans typically have a lot of administrative fees and third-party administrative fees and other filing fees and statement fees and just all kinds of different fees associated with them, and none of those types of expenses have to be disclosed to you, just the management fees. So it's good to know what you're paying on the management fees, but that's not typically the entire story. So a lot of times you can save yourself some money by getting it rolled over to an IRA, because in that environment, you can typically know exactly what you're paying in fees and expenses, especially if you work with a fiduciary. One of the biggest issues that I see, and I always want to bring this up because a lot of times people don't realize this is how it works, but one of the biggest issues that we see is if you have money in a 401k plan and it's with a previous employer for whatever reason, if that employer were to file bankruptcy right now, which of course is more likely than what it was maybe 6 or 7 months ago, of course, the money that you have in your 401k plan, that money is completely frozen while the bankruptcy is taking place. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I always have to be very clear. If the company files bankruptcy, unless you're invested only in that company's stock, you don't typically have to worry about losing all the money that's in the plan. But what ends up happening is you don't have any access to those funds and you can't make any changes with it while the bankruptcy proceedings are kind of playing themselves out. So sometimes individuals will lose the non-vested portion of the company match. Depends on how your 401k plan documents were written up. But usually you don't actually lose the money, you just lose access to it, meaning you cannot roll it over to an IRA while the bankruptcy proceedings are going on. And sometimes that takes years to work themselves out. You cannot change the investments inside of the 401k, which is really crucial, especially in a time period where things are as volatile as they are right now. You cannot take any withdrawals. You can't take any loans or anything like that. So I want to walk you through a real quick story of why I'm bringing this particular point up of a scenario that played out during the last financial crisis. We had a gentleman that was a new client to the firm, and he came to see me, I believe, in kind of late 2007. And that's really when things kind of just began to get a little bit bad. And he unfortunately had been laid off, but he got some severance and he wasn't that concerned about it because he had about $800,000 in his previous employer's 401k. And he really believed that, if he needed to get to that money, he'd be able to. He was over the age of 60, so he could access it without any penalties or anything like that. Well, what ended up happening to him very quickly is right after losing his position, the company filed bankruptcy. So by the time that his severance ran out, when he went back to the 401k and was really looking to take some withdrawals from it and roll the rest over, the rest of it over to us to help him with it, he couldn't take any withdrawals. The money that was in the plan was completely frozen. And then as we got into 2008, of course, the markets started to get pretty volatile. He wanted to sell out the mutual funds that he had inside of the 401k and just move the money to cash. And he could not make those adjustments. So after some time, I don't remember how long it was, but several months, the bankruptcy finally was over. The funds were no longer frozen. They were freed up. He was able to take withdrawals and roll the money over. But unfortunately, it had gone from about $800,000 down to about $400,000. And there was nothing that he or us or anyone could do about it because that's just how those plans work. So in this type of an environment, there's going to be a larger likelihood that companies could actually file for bankruptcy. And again, I want to be very clear. It doesn't mean necessarily you would lose the money, but you lose access to it and you lose control over it. And you have to kind of wait and hope that the bankruptcy doesn't take that long. And you got to kind of have to wait and hope that you don't need the money. And then eventually after the bankruptcy is over, then you can make some changes. So that's a huge issue why we talk about if you're not at your previous employer, we don't think your money should be either. If it's at your previous employer, then you can't add to it like you could add to it and make the account active once you roll it over to an IRA. And then again, getting the monies out of a 401k and into an IRA, usually we can help you make sure that those assets moving forward are going to complement the other investments that you have. And we can manage it, or whoever you go to can manage it and make sure that everything is kind of working in coordination, as opposed to having part of the money under professional care and part of the money in a previous employer's retirement plan that maybe you're trying to manage yourself, but you're just much better off going ahead and getting that money rolled over to an IRA. anytime that you have that option to do that, we usually recommend taking that option. Again, so main thing we're talking about here are the 401ks, 403bs, and then thrift savings plans if you're a federal employee. I've already touched on some of these things, but this is maybe a couple of things that you can double check on if you're currently working for an employer right now. And this doesn't matter whether you think that you may lose your position or not. This is something that either yourself or, again, a loved one, or a friend, family member, or neighbor can possibly take advantage of. One of the things that you can sometimes do if you're still employed at your company, you have money inside of the 401k, maybe you're not completely happy with it, or you would like for diversification to make some changes. Sometimes you can do what's referred to as an in-service rollover or an in-service distribution. And what that means is you still work for the company, you still plan to work for the company, and you are let me get my picture off this so you can see everything. So you still plan to work for the company. You're still going to possibly even contribute to the 401k plan, but you're able to move either all or part of the money over to an IRA. Usually, this comes into play when you are over the age of 59 and a half, but some places will allow you to do this once you turn age 55. And then again, other companies will allow you to do this at any time. The way that you can find out if you're eligible for this is you just want to talk maybe to anyone that's in your HR department, or you can call the custodian on maybe your 401k statement and ask if you're eligible to do this. So again, if you call and ask them these questions, you want to ask the magic words are kind of, can I do an in-service rollover, an in-service withdrawal, an in-service distribution? If you use those types of phrases or terms, they're going to pretty much know exactly what it is that you're asking. And you want to consider maybe doing that. The reason why is similar to what I was just talking about. If the account is dormant, you can usually take all or part of it and roll it to an IRA, and then you're going to have less fees typically, more control, and typically better investment options, because then you can invest the money in anything that you want. Again, those that have been following along with our webinar series, we've talked in the past about the recently passed Secure Act that went into effect January 1st of 2020. So having your money inside of an IRA versus a 401k or 403b when you pass away is actually much better for your heirs and beneficiaries. And I'll keep it very simple. It's just they have more options. They have more options and better things that they can do because they've inherited an IRA versus a 401k. Again, it would protect you from the issue. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it would protect you from the issue of what if your current employer were to file bankruptcy. Same problems occur there if you're still working for the company. Every time a company files for bankruptcy, it doesn't necessarily lay everyone off. So you could actually still be employed, which would be good. But again, you can't make any changes to the 401k. You can't roll it over. You can't change the investments. You can't take any withdrawals if you want to. The money's completely frozen until everything is released from the courts. Hopefully, when that kind of happens, it's just a few months. But sometimes bankruptcy proceedings can take several years. And then the last bullet point that, of course, we have here is you can do these in-service withdrawals and rollovers, and no taxes are going to be due because it is a rollover. So sometimes, again, at any age you can do this. Some companies will allow this to occur if you're over age 55. Others, it's age 59 and a half. But it's something worth looking into and taking a look at, especially with everything that's happening right now in the economy and the stock market. Some other times that these types of rollovers or options are available are, let's say that, again, maybe your company has suspended its company match. Sometimes that changes the rules on rollovers, and that money is eligible to be rolled to an IRA. Other times, let's say if your company was recently or in the past, it was merged with another firm, or maybe they changed the 401k custodian. Some places sometimes will switch from Nationwide to Fidelity, or Fidelity to Charles Schwab. Sometimes when those types of those changes occur there through your employer, then the money becomes eligible for rollover. And anytime that you have the ability to roll funds from a 401k over to an IRA, more often than not, that is something that we would definitely recommend that you take advantage of. So again, either yourself, or if you have any friends or family members that would benefit from something like that, just remind them to ask their HR department or call into the 401k provider directly and ask if they can do an in-service rollover or withdrawal. Or again, anybody that's not comfortable doing that and you would need help to make sure you ask the right questions, that's also something that our advisors can maybe jump on a conference call with you, and we can get the third party on the call, and we can go through and just have us ask the specific questions, because it's something that, of course, we deal with all the time, so we know exactly what to ask. And of course, that would be part of any type of a portfolio review that anybody would like us to do for them. Again, let's say that everything that we've talked about so far here today, unfortunately, you're not eligible for. So if you haven't lost your job, that's a great thing. If you check on the in-service rollover, if they don't allow for that, you can't make any changes, there's nothing that can be done. We can still take a look at the investments that you have as far as options within the 401k, and we can kind of give you some education and some guidance there as well. Usually what we like to do in those scenarios is to run a retirement income analysis to kind of double check and see kind of how good of shape you're in as far as your retirement plans. Once we have that information, then we can tell you specifically, just keep the investments you have in the 401k, or here's maybe some changes to make, some things to possibly do different. Again, that's the type of advice that we give to individuals all the time. Couple of follow-up notes here that I'm going to touch on, and then I'll be wrapping up for the day. At all times, whether what we're going through right now gets better, hopefully in a short time period, or if it lasts a long time, you want to go back and really have some strong safety nets built into the overall portfolio and the overall retirement plan that you're working on. So make sure that you're able to meet normal monthly expenses, and you have a good chunk of money set aside for emergencies. So again, we usually recommend about 6 months worth of living expenses is what we would recommend that someone have in a secure, just regular, maybe savings account or checking account or money market or something like that. Typically, you don't need more than 6 months. Some people like to have more, and that's fine. But usually, almost any emergency that you can think of, 6 months worth of living expenses are going to be enough. So just take whatever it costs to run your household per month, multiply it by 6, and that's how much money you would want to have set aside in some sort of an emergency fund. That will allow you to be able to maintain and get through typically bad bear markets or emergency situations where you've temporarily lost a job, something of that nature. The worst bear market that we've ever seen happened in the 1930s, where the market fell right at about 86%, and then it took a total of 16 years to recover from that. So because those types of scenarios can happen, we recommend having what we refer to as a cash flow bridge, meaning that you need to have the right amount of assets and money invested in a safer position where you don't have to worry about it going down in value to bridge those types of gaps. 16 years is a long time, but if you manage it properly, one's retirement may last 20 or 30 or 40 years. So 16 years to bridge a bad event is not something anybody should be really shocked or surprised if they have to deal with in the future. And the way that you can deal with that is by having a secure cash flow bridge, making sure you're adhering to rules like the rule of 100, so you're able to get through the rough patch and still maintain your lifestyle and still maintain your standard of living. And the way that you can do that is by using the rule of 100 and making sure that you have good guarantees built into the portfolio. And when you have a good mixture of safety versus risk in the portfolio, that then allows you, if you want to take even more risk on your risk-based side, shooting for and chasing some of those higher returns that we hope we will be seeing again in the not too distant future. So bottom line here on this particular slide is it just comes down to having a really great, well-organized, coordinated plan that will allow you to get through these difficult periods like we're seeing right now. Last thing that I wanted to mention, again, I kind of started out the talk here today with a brief overview of it. Whether you decide that you want to come in and talk with us via a conference call or a Zoom meeting or something of that nature, make sure whoever you're going to and working with is a fiduciary. In an environment like we're going through right now, I would not want to work with any type of an advisor unless they were a fiduciary. We're not the only ones. There's other options that are out there. But a lot of individuals in our industry are not held to a fiduciary standard. They're held to what's referred to as a suitability standard, meaning they just have to recommend things to you that are going to be suitable for your situation. But if there was a better investment option, something that was maybe going to have lower fees or lower risk, maybe even perform better. They don't necessarily have to tell you about that. As long as what they recommend to you could be argued that it was suitable, then they are good to go. You don't want to work with advisors that are like that. That's usually about, probably in today's environment, probably about 70% of the advisors that are out there just have to recommend things to you that are suitable. The other 30% are like us. We have to recommend what is absolutely in the client's best interest. So when we go through audits with regulators, when they come in and take a look at what we're recommending to clients, we have to be able to prove that whatever recommendation we made absolutely was what was best for that client. Just can't be good for the client, can't just be better than what they had, has to be of every option that's out there, everything that's available, we had to make the absolute best recommendation that we could to them. So make sure whoever you're talking to has that same fiduciary standard and not just a suitability standard. It's incredibly important, especially in times like these. So you can, once again, schedule a portfolio review with us today if you would like. You can click on the link to the right. Like we said earlier, we're fiduciaries, we're independent, and we are distribution specialists, meaning, once again, we traditionally work with those that are retired or soon to be retired, and we have the ability to work with individuals either through a conference call. We've been having a lot of Zoom meetings with individuals across the country, and then in our different offices, we have some individuals that are still wanting to do face-to-face meetings, and we have that ability on a very limited basis. Of course, we're considered an essential business, and we have a very small staff that's working in the office, taking all of the prescribed precautions to make sure everybody stays safe. But some individuals would prefer a face-to-face meeting, and that's fine. But if you are comfortable with it, we can set up a conference call or a Zoom meeting to get any questions that you might have answered. So you can schedule that review with us today. And please, pass this information on from this particular webinar. Individuals are going to be able to go back and review it again. But if you have friends or loved ones, anybody that's maybe lost a position or is concerned that they may lose their position, and they can benefit from it. But also anybody that has money invested currently in a 401k or a 403b will be able to take advantage of some of the tips that we've talked about here today. If you've missed any of the previous Strategic Wealth Live webinars, you can sign up for those, and you can gain access to some of them that we've talked or any of them that we've covered in the past. If you missed some of them, there's been very good tips that we've given on those as well that I didn't go into again here today. And then last but not least, be sure to follow us on our Facebook page. Again, you'll get updates on upcoming webinars, what the topic's going to be. You're able to submit questions to us there. We'll have an advisor go back and answer those questions for you. We're working on a lot of things as a firm. We've got a fun educational cooking show that's going to be coming up. We have our news appearances and clips for the day for different questions that reporters are asking us about the economy and the stock market. So be sure to follow us on Facebook, and you'll probably be able to get a lot of answers to any questions that you might have. And then again, keep in touch with us. Let us know if we can help you in any way. And if you have money in a dormant 401k or even in an active 401k, get a second set of eyes to take a look at those and schedule a talk. A lot of our initial meetings are just running about 15, 20 minutes on the phone. And everybody that we're having these meetings with, they're walking away and having learned something and something that they can really benefit from. So once again, thank you for tuning in. And I do very much look forward to seeing everybody at some point in the future. Okay, thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.